Okay, so what we are going to do today is build a service similar to Vercel. So Vercel, if you don't have a background, is a service which enables user to deploy their projects by submitting the Git URL to on their page, and then you can actually see that project deployed on their infrastructure. So we'll try to build a similar kind of service, but only the catch here is we'll not be actually writing the whole code base, but we'll be doing that with the help of cursor. So that's what the idea over here is. So we'll try to keep the prompt as minimal as possible so that we also try to minimize the corrections. And what's not covered in this video is that we'll not be going into very details of how cursor works and then the underlying technologies that work, but we'll show what the power of tool is, and then if we know what we are trying to build is what we can get out of this tool. So the idea here is this diagram again can be a bit complex. So what we are trying to do here is there will be a developer who wants to say deploy his React code. So there will be a builder UI which will accept this particular Git URL and it will get submitted to the uploader service. The sole service, so the sole thing of uploader service is it will get that code base from the GitHub and then upload it to the store first of all. And once it is uploaded to the store, here we are using R2, but it can be any other S3 storage or any service that you can utilize here. And then it will also post the same on a database. Now here we will try to use Redis hash maps to store the status of a particular project that is being uploaded by having a unique project ID. And then also need to submit it for building, right? So we'll use a Redis queue over here, which will be picked up by the builder service later on. So once the uploading is done over here and then a message is passed on to the queue, the builder will pick up things from there. It will build this particular project. Now just for sample we'll be doing the React one here, but depending on the complexity there can be multiple builder services as well. So focusing on React, it will generate a distributable folder which you can actually host it onto any server, and then it can display the website. So that's the idea here. So once that build is done, we'll try to save it into a distributable folder and try to serve it to the end user using a Nginx proxy and a requester service. So requester service, again based on our project ID, will fetch the details from the store and act as a proxy for us. So that's the idea. Let's get on to cursor and see how much we can implement out of this. Yeah, I have the chat window already enabled, but if you start your install cursor and then get started, you'll see something like this. You can press Command L and you'll see the cursor tab over here. So we'll not be using the chat functionality, we'll be using the composer. Now why not chat is because chat only enables you to work with a single file and then refactor based on that, but the composer will enable you to work on multiple files and create like a multi-file edits as well, and yeah, it can auto update those files also. It won't require your permission to accept each and every change. Okay, so to start with, I think we'll start defining the prompt that we want. So I have pre-written some of them and then we'll go over them one by one. So first we'll just mention that we want to build a project which has following components. So I'm planning to use Docker over here so that we have all these services built under a single component, and then it's easier to deploy and test as well. First thing that we'll be looking into is our uploader service, right? So let's paste that here. I want that upload service to be a Node.js project and it accepts a Git repo. So there will be an upload API and it will try to store the content onto the store, that is our Cloudflare. Now one thing that we can do here is we can also do annotations over here. So if I am able to give some documentation, that also works over here, right? So I can give it a web URL saying search it from web or search it from specific documentation. Okay, right now I think this much should be sufficient for it to pick up the details. Later on we'll try to see and tag the required documentation. Right now the second thing that we're telling it is make sure each project is uploaded should be saved in a folder identified by a unique ID, as we said. So it will have a project ID as we said, and then all the files will go inside it. This is something optimization that we are doing. We're not storing it as such, but we are compressing and then storing it over there. And then we maintain the status in the Redis set, so that, as we said here, so that we can check into what is the status, whether it is building, failed, or whatever. And then after that everything is done, we write it into the Redis queue. Okay, so that's the thing for the uploader service that we have mentioned. Next will be our builder service. Now again, for the builder service, we'll give details in the similar way. So builder service picks up the details from the Redis queue, as we mentioned over here, and then build the project and write it back to the store in the folder name external. Now I'm saying external here, but you can say this, depends on whatever you want. And then in the extracted format is what we want, right? And then once that is done, it will also update the status, right? After that, we also want the requester service, which is request handler service, which is this. So let's write for that one as well. So request handler service, when user hits the service from the user should get the built version of the project from the S3 storage, or we could say the R2 storage, and we'll say Cloudflare to be more specific. And I'm trying to modify the host file. This is for us to be more user friendly. So whenever we want to access it on the web page, we want to say, okay, this project id.myvercel.com, and that is how Vercel also currently does it, where it reroutes it to your specific host where it is hosted, but you have to hit a domain name instead of the exact project, passing the project ID and everything. So that's the user friendliness, and it's easier to share the URL as well. And I've also mentioned here set up Nginx as required. So now this is something which we are telling the composer to do, but we'll see how it goes from there. We are asking a lot over here, I feel, but let's see how much we are able to accomplish with this prompt, right? And the next one is we also want this triggering UI, right, which we talked about, the Vercel builder UI. So this can be a simple React app which will trigger the upload service to provide a Git URL, and then it should show the status, whatever is happening, right? And show the URL which we can hit, and then see the website that is deployed, right? So after this, generally what I do is that we have given everything. We'll also give some technical requirements to it, and then say, okay, I want to use Docker Compose so that everything is under a microservice. I also want Redis and then other libraries as required. We also want logging and debugging properly done. So most probably it will also pick up, if it's Node.js, it will pick up Winston library for logging. And then we want to have the environment variable in the Docker Compose. Now again, this details you can only know if you've already done some development using Docker, but this is also one way to tell it in advance so that you don't have to make prompting again. And then also this is very helpful when it's already creating the APIs for you, so as well it can give the curls so that you can test it. And then also the bucket name, we would say the R2 bucket name is like Vercel v2, right? So that it's very easier for it to refer it everywhere and can be stored in environment variable. Let's set this and then see what we get. Or one thing which we could do is we can actually add some context to the R2 documentation that we have. So Cloudflare provides this way for you to actually store your objects, and you can create buckets over here. So I'm trying to see if we can get some documentation over here and then give that link to the composer so that it can pick up the documentation. Now this is how you add new documentation, right? So you just paste the URL over here, and then once that is done, you can just press enter and say, okay, this is for Cloudflare R2, right? And then basically it will be using this as a reference for building out the code. You can also give Docker and other details just for it to be helpful, but I think this much should be sufficient. And then we click on enter and see what it does for us. So initially, I think it has got the good reference. So it started to build Vercel clone project with a Docker compose as we expected it to do with the environment variable and then all the services that we mentioned. So you can see we have the uploader service, the builder, the request handler, and also the UI over here. Perfect. And then we also have the Nginx setup at the top level. Okay. And then it's asking for a couple of things, which is like the environment variable setup, Redis, and the Docker compose for each and every component. So let's see here what's happened, right? So it's got the builder, the uploader, and the requester service. I don't see the requester service, but yeah, let's see. To continue with the request handler service UI and as well as the command curl. Let's say please continue, because it's trying to build a request handler, and that is what I was looking into. So we have the builder uploader. So now we need the request handler service to be created over here. Okay, perfect. And then we also need the UI. Okay, Nginx. Perfect. And then the React UI. Okay, perfect. Now, so we got all the services actually created over here. And only thing that we would do here is we'll click accept all, and then we can go over and validate what it has done for us, right? So let's go to the uploader first of all, where our actual uploading thing will be happening, right? So as you can see, we have got pretty much all the things set up here. So there's a logger setup. This is like a standard library which is used in Node.js. So it will be logging everything correctly. We've got Express server setup. It's got the configuration setup done for the S3 client to connect to the R2. We need to provide this account ID and everything via the environment variable. Then it's trying to have a upload API where we'll be actually passing in the URL, and then we can say upload it to the S2, upload it to the R2. And once that is done, it's also updating the asset with the project and its status as uploaded, and then it's pushing to the queue. And again, we've not even provided the Redis documentation, but it's still picked up pretty good. And then yeah, so pretty much it will be running this on 3.0.1. Then we'll have the actually our starting point will be this UI, but we can also manually hit the upload API and then do it. So how I would like to do it is go to the uploader, submit something, see if it goes to the builder, and then access it from request handler, and the UI will be the last thing we'll like to build. Yeah, let's see. So first of all, let's try to build this and see if everything is fine. Prior to that, I'd like to set up the environment variable for this. So I think it has pretty much set up everything. Got the bucket name. So let's see if we have the bucket name set up on our R2. Again, this one is like pretty simple UI. You'll have to go to the dashboard of Cloudflare and then into the R2 object store. You can see there's a create bucket option here. You can name it whatever you want, but I'm just naming it for the convention's sake right now that we have given here. You can set up the location and the storage class, create the bucket. So now all the files that we upload project wise should go over here ideally. Next thing that we would require is the account ID, access ID, and the secret key. I think this I'll get it from one of my earlier project and then try to use that one. Right, so where is it? We need the account ID, then we need the access key, and then we need the secret. All these details you should be able to get it over here and then generate the token and then copy it. So that should be it. If you can refer to the documentation of Cloudflare if you get stuck, but I think that should be generating this should be pretty easy. If not, if you just query in the composer, it will also give you steps to how to generate this. But for now, I think this much should be sufficient. And to run this project, you can just go here and then click on compose up. Now, the thing is you'll need to have a Docker plugin installed in the cursor if you don't have it. This again is something extra which you would like to check into some tutorial and get it done. So you can also a fair thing, right? So you can either run the Docker through the commands or through just the UI, right? And this plugin enables you to actually trigger Docker command. So if you go into the extension and then search for Docker, this first extension is what you want to install, and this will help you get that menu of okay. When you right click, you do compose up. So basically what this is going to do is it will trigger the command for building all this service and then making it up and running for you. So we've started getting some error. Let's see what we got. The attribute version is obsolete, will be ignored. Please remove it, avoid potential errors. Started building what's saying failed to solve a Docker file, no such file found. Okay, in the UI it didn't get any Docker file. Okay. So there are two things which we can do here now. We can either copy this and then say, okay, this is inside the UI, or we could redirect the, so how I would do it is I would just select this and add to composer and say no Docker file in UI service, getting this error. So now it will create the Docker file for the UI component as well, and it will create all the required files for us to have it ready. So anyways, this module is the last one we want to focus on. We want to first focus on the backend thing that we want. Let's try to build it again. So we compose down so that if any other Docker instance is running, it will just stop, and then we'll again do compose up so that it will start building all of this again. Oh, so it looks like it has not generated Docker file for all of them. So let's see. Builder and request handler. No Docker file for and request handler module. So this, I don't know why this is happening, but it should have actually picked it up earlier only. We'll say accept all And now I do see Docker file for each of the modules, and it is getting node, and then again node. Perfect. So this should do it actually. Let's try to run it again. Yeah, so looks like now it is running. If it runs well, what will happen is we'll see in the Docker that there will be multiple services running, and then will be this. Is it which one might need to have is this Docker desktop, so that you can see what containers are getting built, and then you'll be able to see the logs from here. This again can be downloaded on the web looking at the documentation. So now that the Docker has built all the container, let's see what we've got, right? So instance up, then we have the uploader, the builder, and the request handler. Okay, perfect. So let's go into the uploader first of all, and then see. Yeah, it's up on 3001, and we can actually use the curl that was given when we asked, and then we can try to hit the uploader service with a sample Git URL. So this is the one, right? So we can actually get it into a Postman. So here I've got that curl imported into the Postman, and then now let's try to hit it with our GitHub repo that we want to build. So now I have a sample Git repo, which is like a Git URL for a React project, simple React project. So I'll just paste that over here, and let's click on send and see if we are able to see some logs over here. Yeah, we got the request, but the problem here is this was something which I expected, because the git command will not be available inside the Docker until we manually install it. So we might need, so now again here we can either modify the Docker file manually, or we could actually pass this information to Composer and let it figure out. So let's try to do that. So we go here and say the uploader service has error, and we paste our error here. Intelligent enough to figure out that the git command is not there, and then it will, okay, perfect. So it will add git to our Docker file. Perfect. Now we can either run this start. So let's try to see if we can run this, and it will only build one service, probably the uploader one. Okay, let's go back to the Docker desktop. Having a local setup of all these services is a tedious one, so I think that's the reason we have to deal with the build. Yeah, so I think loader is, it's recreating. Let's see. Perfect. So now we got it again. We can again go into the postman and see if we are able to query, and this time we get a success to upload the file. Okay, perfect. So we got the status as uploaded and message as project uploaded successfully, meaning our uploader service was able to clone it and then also upload it to the R2 storage. Now let's see whether it actually got there. And our project ID was starting with something like 89. So let's see. Yeah, so I see there is one object that is created, and inside that we should have our source. Perfect. So that's what we wanted. So now source is here. Pick it up. And why did it not pick up? Or if it errored out. Okay, perfect. So we got some build error. So it's actually picked up the message for this project. So it was able to receive from the Redis queue. Again, the second part of our architecture is also working here, where it's posting to the queue and this is getting picked on the builder. Now let's see. We can pass this error message again to our composer, and then error builder service, and then we paste the error. So it should be intelligent enough to find out what the issue is. I think it's not able to write, it doesn't have proper permission, looks like. Trying to read a directory when uploading to R2. Oh, okay, perfect. So it's added a new upload directory function to handle the upload and get content type. Okay, perfect. Recursive reading, yeah, perfect. It figured it out that there might be multiple files inside it, and then try to properly upload. So basically the problem was because there are like hierarchy of files, it was not able to save it. So it has added that recursive logic. So once we click on accept changes, it should have made that change. Only challenge will be we'll need to stop all of them and then run again. And make it up again. Okay, perfect. So we have all of the services up. Let's validate in Docker desktop. Perfect. So we have everything now. We would want to go again, hit the uploader service and check if builder gets it. So I'm trying to go and hit this again. Now we should see one more project got up, started building, and we didn't get that earlier error. So I think it should have moved further, and then now it must be uploading the files to the storage. Cool. Let's validate that. So this one starts with the project ID 50. Build and then try to upload the files at the same time. Let's see what's happening in the builder service. Yeah, so once it is here, it will start building. So this is where we are getting the details, and it is now getting the file from there. It will try to unzip it and then try to npm install npm run build, and then whatever is in that build directory, it will try to upload it. But this is where the catch is, because there might be a lot of files, and if it's trying to upload each and every one of them, that will be a problem. Or it might take some time. Okay, perfect. So it's uploaded all the files is what it is saying, and okay, build is also completed. Perfect. So it must have generated and a distributable which we can actually open and see the project on. But the next step of this is we want to serve it through our request service. Just to go back to where we started from. So this one, the uploader service is looking good. It is uploading to the store, source.zip. Then there's a builder service which is picking it up from here and then trying to put it into the distributable folder. So let's see whether we have it onto our R2 storage. This is the folder where we had that. Oh, it went at the, okay, interesting. So it saved it, but not inside the project. At the top level. Oh, okay. Okay. I don't think we want it this way. We want it inside the project ID / external. Okay, we can tell composer that's the change that we want. To be inside the project ID / external. Okay, so it changed the key. Oh, okay, perfect. So it was key external and then the project ID, so it just reversed it. Okay, perfect. This is what we wanted. And it should look like this. Exactly, that is what we want. So now I'll just rerun the Docker so that all services are refreshed. Once this is done, I think the major part that we need to validate would be the requester service. That's where major time will go. So let's do compose up. Perfect. On the builder and try to trigger one more build with the same project. So depending on the project size, it takes a little bit to upload it and also some more time to build it. Again, as we mentioned earlier, if we this is specifically focused towards React project, should work for the other front-end projects as well. But if we want, say, something different where we want like Java applications to be deployed, we might need to have different builders and then a specific builder for a specific technology and then scale accordingly. So the build is started for the project starting with D7. And so what I was saying is currently we have a builder service which is like more focused towards front-end projects. So we can have multiple builder services specializing in different kind of technology, and then based on the type of project we could also pass it to a different builder service that will give much extensibility. Just a thought, I think for now this architecture should be fine, but yeah, we can extend onto it. So yeah, all of them are created, and then where are we on the upload part? Okay, build is completed, so we should have the files in the R2. Okay, let's refresh. Yeah, so we got D7 and perfect. So we got the source and then external folder, and this should have all the index.html and the other files which are required for the website to function. Perfect. Now we need the next part, which is this Nginx to be working with the requester service. Requester service, if we hit the project ID and the file, we should be able to get it from here. Let's see how that works. So builder is fine. Let's check what is happening here, right? So first of all, it's having a express server, and based on the, we don't want the status, we want this one. Yeah, this is what we're looking for. So whenever there is any request, it will come over here. We'll get the project ID out of the host, right? And then get the files from the external folder. Okay, again, I think here it would be a little bit different. So what we can do is we can point out to, we can add it in the composer and then let it know that this might create a problem. In the request handler, we are referring to external slash project ID, but we want to have project ID slash external being served. To the builder service. So I think it should, we'll need to update the request handler, and then it has to go project and then the external. Perfect. So this is what will be the change, but I wanted it to be more explicit so that if it's required anywhere else, it would do that. Perfect. So we accepted that, and now we should have the request handler also ready to serve us the file. Okay, so we'll first, again, we'll need to compose down, and then we can actually try to get the previous built project hit via the request handler. So request handler is running on port 3003, right? So let's try to see if we can actually try to hit it and get the index.html first. So once we are able to do that, we can try to then go to Nginx as well. What it will do is it will get all the requests on 8080, and then from the domain name it will fetch up the project ID and pass it to request handler. Actually this should also work. So we can go localhost, then your project ID, sorry, not localhost, just the project ID myvercel.com, and then it should forward the project ID automatically. Let's see what happens. So our earlier version of project number was this. This can be a shorter ID also. It's just that it was auto generated, so we kept it the UUID based. It can be a short one also, or a custom name also. Now let's go onto the browser and try to see if we can hit it. It will go something like this. Dot myvercel.com. I think this should suffice now, but the challenge here is, for this to happen we'll need to add this to our hosts/hosts file, so that it is redirected over there. Or the other way around, just for testing right now, would be we can go local 3000, it is 3003, and then the project ID, which will be this one, and then go index.html, and it should show us the index.html file. Project not found or not built yet. Is it queuing it from over here, from the requester handler service? Yeah. So because it is not able to find it out, it's showing that way. Okay, no worries. So what we want is, okay. So from the host it is getting it that way. So I think we'll need to always pass the ID in the host only. So let's do this way, right? So we'll modify our host file so that domain name is always in our system. So ideally what will happen is, whenever we are trying to hit something like this, it will get redirected to 127.1, which is our local host. And then our code base, what it will do is it will extract this first part, which is our project ID, and then pick up the files from our code, basically the R2 storage, and return. So long story short, what we want to do is we want to edit this file and add our project ID over here. Now it will depend on what we add, will depend on what is configured over here. So it says a regex, which is like project ID, then myvercel.com. So we'll get the project ID from here, which was this D7. We'll also confirm if that D7 has your external folder already saved. Yeah, D7 has it, and then we try to add it to the hosts file /etc/hosts, and it will be here. just to write out and we exit. And now it should have that entry, and it is my Vercel only.com. Yeah, perfect. So now once we hit this, we should be at least able to see something. Perfect. So you see here, we already got the file, but now only challenge I'm seeing here is some of the files are not getting loaded, and we'll see why is that. So let's go to network and see what's happening, right? Yeah, so I don't see this file getting returned, which is our JSNE CSS file, but I doubt that we're there on the storage. Oh, interesting. So looks like not all the files were saved, because it will also, when you do npm run build, it will have a folder also. Okay, interesting. So that just means that we are able to see this file, not the other ones, and then there is some issue in our builder service which is uploading. Builder service is not uploading folders after the build. Okay, yeah, perfect. So it was not recursively doing it. This is what we want to fix. So now it should also have all the folders which will be generated. Right. Once again, we'll just do compose down. And do compose up. And then try to hit the URL again. Oh, but we'll not get the file. So we'll need to trigger a new build again. Once everything is started, we trigger the build. And once we get the ID, we'll need to add it to the hosts as well, so that it's available for us to access. Now why again we are adding to the host file is, again, you'll need to research on that, but for now this is what is required. So we'll add it here. And I'll do write out and then exit. Okay, so now we should have that. The project is also uploaded, and whether it is built or not, we'll see directly onto the service, the builder service. Yeah, so build is also completed. Oh, but did it upload all the... Yeah, perfect. So we got main in the static. Now I suppose we should be able to see it. R2. starting with what? 47 external. Yeah, now we got static and everything. So let's try to refresh this and see if our project is running. Okay, I think oh yeah, the ID will change, right? This will be the ID. Perfect. So this is the React app that we were actually having over there on that repo, and we are able to access it via this URL. So what's happening here is we'll also go over Nginx log to see whether the data is really flowing from there, right? So if you can see here, all these files are getting the static main.js and all these files are getting served at index.html are getting served through Nginx, and then the Nginx is forwarding the request to the request handler, which is also serving those files. I don't think we are having any logging in the request handler service, because it will be too much logs for each and every file, but that is what is happening. So in the response we are actually sending whatever we get from the storage, and that is how the project is working. So I think right now we've got this part also figured out, where Nginx is actually able to serve the files which are stored over here. So this is how I think the whole process now is complete. Only part that is missing is this Vercel builder UI, which is it's an additional perk which we'll have, but for now the whole service is working. Our UI service was actually set up here, but it was not running in the Docker desktop. Let's see what happened there. Could not find required file named search app.js. So let's fix UI service now. This one. I'm sure we can also give them the Docker reference, but I'm not sure how we can do that. What did it just do? Oh, we need to add an entry point for so the React app was not correctly set up, looks like. It did set it up, and then it should start working now. Okay, so we have the changes updated and also the services up. Let's try to see if we have the UI ready. Okay, UI is up. and it will be on localhost 3000. Perfect. So developing this UI will in itself be a different project where you can do multiple things, tap onto the Redis set that we are showing up, and then check its status from the Redis queue as well, and all other. But let's try to see what the composer has built by default, right? Let's try to see if we can give the initial version of code base that we had, right? Over here, which was this starter git, because this was building faster. It's a smaller repo. So let's see, inspect if it calls the right API. It says really it should not, but we can get help from composer to see what can be done over here. Module for both of the service, which will be for which the API will be hit, and then I think it might have allowed all of the hosts, or it can selectively allow the hosts, depends on how we want it. Yeah, so it's allowed both of this. Perfect. So we'll do accept all, and once that is done, we'll try to rebuild the containers. Actually, this is something which we could have told initially also when we wrote our very initial prompt, saying that handle the CORS issues wherever applicable, so that we don't have to do this later on. And that's when, like, this kind of issues when you encounter, you'll get to know next time whenever you are building a project which has some UI and also backend service, you will be always ready to give that input. I think the services are started, and we can try to hit the UI again and see if it works. We clicked on deploy, and let's see if it went through actually to the, okay, perfect. So as you can see, it showed us the project ID. It also showing that the status is building. I think this much is more than sufficient to prove that we could write bigger applications if we know the right technologies to use, and then prompt accordingly, and get the code out. So after that, only thing which will be like very critical will be validating if the code is really correct. Like, say in this kind of scenario, that it has actually some of the methods which are API calls inside the app.js only. So we could point it out via chat and say, okay, we want this methods to be moved into a util folder, and then or API folder, and then do that for all the functions that are making API call, so that we have the API layer in one specific folder. So those kind of things can be done, or we could do it manually as well. But we do have a basic version of the project running in no time. If we had to code it manually, this would have taken like at least 5 to 6 hours to get this level of thing ready. To validate, also it's installing the dependencies. So the build might take time depending on the memory and the storage available for the Docker pods to run, but I think overall we do have the project running. I'll be saving this repo, whatever I've created right now, to the Git and then sharing it. And that completes the whole picture that we have created over here when we started. So we have the developer push the code to the uploader service. Earlier what we were doing while testing was we were making a postman call from here, and then we were triggering, but right now then we have started doing this along with the UI, but nothing changes. We have the uploader service uploading it to the cloud store. Then we also have the builder service pulling from the queue which project is already uploaded, and then it is getting stored into the external folder or the distributable folder, and that is getting served via the requester service by Nginx to the user. And you can see it has done the status as built, and the URL is also shown. Only thing here is if we go onto this URL, it will not be accessible. We'll need to add that URL to our host file for now, but when it is actually hosted, there are configurations which can be made on the DNS server for this to be resolved automatically. We can do one thing. This last one which was deployed from the UI, we can test it out and then we'll wrap up. So we have that over here. So ideally, if I go and say open with a new tab, it should be able to serve the files, and we have the thing being served from our Nginx, then the requester service getting the files from the storage. We could try to see if we are able to generate the readme file for this project or someone to refer on to the architecture that we have here, and that is a lot that we are asking the AI to do, but let's see how we get the response, right? So let's try to ask it, can you generate a diagram of the architecture of this project, use required formats, integrate it into, or I was planning to integrate it into readme file, but I think that should be sufficient. Let's see what file format it does give. Perfect. So it's using Mermaid to create a graph kind of structure. Interesting. Can you create a So what I've told it is create a architecture HTML file and add the mermaid that it has created into it. So let's see how it goes. I think if this is possible, then creating documentation should also be pretty possible. Perfect. Let's try to see, open this one in a web browser. So it has generated architecture diagram where it says, okay, there's a React UI which actually through Nginx gets the file. Okay. We hit the requester uploader service. The uploader service also interacts with the Redis. Interesting. Then we also have a builder service which connects with the Redis. And there is a request handler. It did refer to Redis, but not the queue and the asset differently. Fair enough. Then it also knows that we are connecting which components to Cloudflare R2 storage, and then this is all under Docker environment, and there's a reverse Nginx proxy which is actually serving via request handler. This is really interesting. So it has actually made a pretty good understanding, and I think this is really cool. Let me know what you guys think. Thank you.